Happy Friday and welcome to Financial Wellness Fridays with Mariah. In today's video, we're going to be covering the topic of budgeting. What is budgeting? And then going over one technique of how to budget that I use. So we'll start off with a quick introduction. My name is Mariah and I live in Arizona, where I attend Arizona State University as a full-time student and I work as a full-time teller at a local credit union. I have a huge passion for financial wellness and I'm super excited to share that passion with the world as I try to reach young adults like me who may not have had the education in school to be financially independent in their adulthood. So let's jump right in with budgeting, which is one of the basics of financial wellness. What is budgeting? Budgeting is a financial plan. It's how you intend to use the income that you have coming in order to reach your goals. It's super important to take control of your money, and budgeting helps you do that. So, why budget? I think it's really important to find your own why of budgeting. Why do you want to budget? But some basics are in order to be prepared for an emergency in the future, in order to avoid financial stress by not really knowing where your next paycheck is going to. And it also helps you take advantage of your money and have your money working for you instead of you working for your money. And lastly, who should budget? In my opinion, the answer to this is everyone. Even if you just got your first job at 16 and you're barely making an income and you don't really have any expenses, budgeting is super important. No matter what stage of life you're at, it's important to get started as soon as possible so that you can start building those healthy financial habits. Even if you're 16 and you don't have a lot of expenses, you can learn the difference between wants and needs and make sure that you're putting some of your income towards savings for the future. So let's jump right in. The method of budgeting that I think is super easy to learn as a beginner is the 50-30-20 rule. This takes a look at your net income and factors it into three categories. Let's talk a little bit about what net income is in the first place. Net income is the amount of income that you're making minus taxes and other deductions at your pay period time. So this includes things like federal and state taxes and Medicare and Social Security deductions. It's super important that you create your budget based on your net income so that you know how much you're actually going to be taking home rather than your gross income and not having enough money left over in the budget because you didn't factor in taxes and deductions. So what does the 50% mean? The 50% is 50% of your income should be going towards expenses. This includes your fixed and your variable expenses. Fixed expenses are expenses that are the same every single month, and variable expenses are expenses that change from month to month. However, you can still budget for those variable expenses, and one way to figure out how much, like the cap amount that you can spend on those variable expenses, is by taking a look at the past 3 months, how much you've spent on those expenses, and then averaging them to determine how much you really should be spending on that. Next is the 20%. 20% of your income should go towards savings and debt payoff. This is my personal favorite category because I love watching my savings account grow. There's two important things to keep in mind when you're saving. The first is that you should always be trying to build up an emergency fund. If something were to go wrong and you needed that income right away, you have a savings account built up so that you don't have to go into debt. The second thing to remember is a balance between savings and debt payoff. Because if you go all in on your debt payoff, great, you're going to get out of debt quicker. But what happens when the next emergency comes up and you don't have the funds available to cover it? Now you're going to have to add to that debt. So it's super important to build that emergency savings while simultaneously paying off debt instead of going all in on one or the other. The last category might be the favorite for some of you, and that is the wants category. Wants are a super important part of budgeting because it's what's going to drive you to make that money. If you're at a job that you don't really enjoy and all you're doing is spending your money on expenses and savings, then you're probably not going to want to go to work in the morning. So I think it's super important to keep in mind that 30% of your income gets to go to something that makes you happy. A super important thing to keep in mind is that the want category is a maximum amount. You should be spending a maximum of 30% of your income on your wants. If you would rather save a little bit of extra for something that you're saving for in the future, for example, I'm saving for a house, then you can put some of that extra money towards your savings instead of spending it on your wants. Or if you're already in a situation where you're paying more than 50% of your income on expenses, you can borrow from the wants category in order to cover those expenses. The one thing that you shouldn't ever decrease the amount that you're doing is your savings category, because it's super important to save and pay off those debts. So keep that in mind. And that's it. That's the 50-30-20 rule. It's super simple and easy to start out with as a budget in order to kind of get a grasp on that money and how to budget in the first place. We might be going into a few more complicated techniques of budgeting, but this is a great place to start for beginners that haven't had any budgeting experience before. So if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like. Hit the subscribe button if you'd like to stick around for the multi-part series on budgeting. And go ahead and share this video with your friends if you think it would be helpful for them, and leave a comment down below on topics you would like to see me cover. Thank you, and I'll see you next Friday.